My name is Claire Thompson. I'm 29 years old, and for the past 5 years, I've been homeless on the streets of Seattle. Once, I was a preschool teacher. I had an apartment, friends, and a little car that smelled faintly of crayons because of all the art supplies I carried around. But life has a way of crumbling faster than you think. One layoff, one illness, one heartbreak, and the ground under your feet disappears. People often ask me, "Why didn't you just go home to your family?" They don't know that for some of us, home was never safe to begin with. I ran from abuse at 17, and by the time I was in my 20s, I was used to surviving on my own. But rent in the city was like a tidal wave, and eventually, it swallowed me whole. I'm telling you my story now because I need people to know what I saw the night I died, and the truth Jesus revealed to me about poverty. That winter was the coldest I'd ever felt. My shelter spot was under a rusting bridge where the wind cut through the blankets like knives. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. I remember lying there, shivering so hard I could hear my teeth clicking, trying to hum an old church song my grandmother used to sing. Jesus loves me, this I know. I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. If he loved me, why was I here? The last thing I remember from that night was my breathing slowing, my eyelids heavy, and then quiet. The gnawing hunger, the cold, the ache in my bones, all gone. When I opened my eyes, I was standing. The bridge, the garbage, the darkness, they were gone. Instead, I was in a place that glowed from everywhere and nowhere at once. It wasn't blinding, but warm, as if the light itself knew my name. And then I saw him, Jesus. I knew it was him before he spoke. He didn't have to introduce himself. His eyes, they were the color of compassion. Not just brown, not just deep. They were a place you could fall into and never want to climb out of. "Claire," he said, and my name sounded different in his voice. Complete, whole, like it had been broken before, and now was put back together. I fell to my knees. I didn't mean to. It just happened. "Why?" I choked out. "Why did you let me be poor? Hungry? Forgotten?" He reached out and lifted me to my feet. "You think poverty is the absence of money," he said gently, "but it is first the absence of love. The world measures wealth in coins, but I measure it in compassion. The greatest hunger is not for bread, but for being seen, known, and valued." I started crying, harder than I had in years. Then why does poverty still exist? He looked at me, not with condemnation, but with a sorrow that made my chest ache. Because I gave people the power to love one another, but many choose fear instead. Fear of giving, fear of losing, fear of being uncomfortable. Poverty exists because hearts are closed before wallets are. I wanted to argue, to tell him it wasn't fair, but the words wouldn't come. Somehow, deep inside, I knew he was right. He took my hand, and suddenly we were somewhere else, in a busy street I didn't recognize. People walked past a man on the sidewalk holding a cardboard sign. Some glanced at him, most didn't. "Do you see him?" Jesus asked. "Yes," I whispered. "What do you see?" I hesitated. "A homeless man." "Look again," he said. And when I looked, my breath caught. I didn't just see a man anymore. I saw his whole story. The childhood laughter, the betrayal, the string of losses that led him here. I saw the ache in his heart for someone to just care. "Every person you passed on the street," Jesus said softly, "was my child. When you love them, you love me. When you ignore them, you ignore me." Tears blurred my vision. Then, what about me? Did anyone see me? He smiled in a way that broke me open. "I saw you every night, Claire. Every time you wept, I was beside you. Every time you thought no one noticed, heaven noticed." His hand squeezed mine, and I felt the weight of something I couldn't name, love so strong it almost hurt. "But your time on earth isn't over," he said. "You're going back, and you'll tell them what I've told you. You'll tell them that poverty is a wound in the body of humanity, and love is the only medicine. You will be my witness." I shook my head. "I'm nobody. I don't even have a home." He looked at me with that eternal patience. "Claire, you are my home." The light around us began to fade, and I felt myself falling backwards, like being swept away in a wave. When I woke up, I was lying in a hospital bed. They told me a stranger had found me under the bridge and called 911. My body had been minutes from shutting down completely. I didn't tell them everything, not yet, but I knew my life was no longer mine. I spent 3 weeks recovering in the hospital. They gave me warm meals, clean clothes, and a social worker who tried to find me housing. But more than anything, I carried the memory of his voice, the warmth of his hand holding mine, and the mission he gave me. At night, I would close my eyes and replay it. Poverty is a wound in the body of humanity, and love is the only medicine. When I was discharged, they placed me in a small women's shelter downtown. I had a bed, a locker, and a roof over my head for the first time in years. But I also had something else, a purpose. I started talking to the other women there, not just surface conversations about the weather or food, but really talking, asking their stories, listening without judgment. And every time I did, I remembered the way Jesus had shown me that homeless man's life, how he had made me see. One night, a young woman named Jasmine sat next to me, hugging her knees. "Nobody cares," she muttered. "We're just trash to them." I told her, "That's not true. You are loved more than you could possibly understand." She laughed bitterly. "By who?" I swallowed hard. It was time. And so I told her everything. The night I froze under the bridge, the place of light, the eyes of Jesus, and the truth he spoke about poverty. I told her how he had shown me the stories behind the faces, how he said love, not money alone, was the cure. Jasmine didn't laugh this time. She just stared at me, tears slowly slipping down her cheeks. "I needed to hear that," she whispered. Word spread in the shelter. Some believed me instantly. Others were skeptical, but almost everyone admitted they wanted to believe it was true, that God saw them, that they weren't invisible. It wasn't just about faith. It was about dignity. People started sharing more meals, more kindness. A woman who had been hoarding her donated blankets began giving them to others. The room felt lighter. Weeks turned into months. I started volunteering at a church's outreach program. I wasn't just receiving help anymore. I was giving it. Hot meals, listening ears, warm coats. And every single time I would look into someone's eyes and silently remind myself, this is Jesus' child. But I also began speaking publicly. Small gatherings at first, then larger ones. Community groups, churches, even a few high schools. I would tell them my story, and then I would say, "You want to know why poverty exists? Jesus told me, because too many hearts are closed. The cure isn't just charity. It's connection. It's seeing people as humans, not problems." Some people wept. Others looked uncomfortable. But that was okay. Jesus hadn't sent me back to make people comfortable. He had sent me back to wake them up. One winter afternoon, I stood outside the same bridge where I had almost died. The wind was just as sharp, the air just as heavy. But this time, I wasn't alone. The church group was with me, handing out thermoses of soup and warm gloves. I saw a man shivering in a thin hoodie, his eyes wary. I knelt beside him. "Hi, I'm Claire," I said softly. "What's your name?" He hesitated. "Marcus." I handed him a cup of soup. "Marcus, I want you to know something. You're seen. You're valued. You're loved." He blinked at me, like the words didn't make sense. And then, slowly, his eyes filled with tears. That's when I knew. His words were still alive. The mission wasn't mine alone. It was for anyone willing to open their heart. I still don't have much by the world's standards. My room is small. My income is minimal. But I am rich in purpose, in love, in the knowledge that I am his home. And I will keep telling this story until the day he calls me back. Because now I understand. Poverty is not proof that God has forgotten us. It's proof that we have forgotten each other. And it's time to remember.